We're talking SEC football here on Southeastern 14. I'm Chase Robinson. Glad you are joining us today. We're going to talk some Auburn football. We got former Auburn quarterback Jason Campbell, now the analyst of the radio broadcast there with the Auburn Sports Network, also the Believe in Everything Auburn podcast. We're going to dive into some Auburn football post-spring. But before we do that, got to remind you about Bet Online, your number one source for all of your summer sports this season, from MLB to golf, NBA, and NHL. All the latest stats, news, and scores available to you and your favorite teams. Get the latest odds and lines, including the latest team matchups, player props, and odds on just about every sport out there. Head over to the website or use your mobile device to get in on the action. Bet Online, where the game starts. So, Jason, new year for Auburn football, year two under Hugh Freeze. How important do you think this spring was for Hugh Freeze, just getting ready for his second season leading this Auburn football program?
Well, the first year was kind of a year that, everyone kind of just said, okay, this is a opportunity to get to know the program, he just put together his coaching staff. And, so everyone knew the first year is kind of not a year to judge anyone off of. And I think for him, he got a chance to see we're behind a little bit in the recruiting and we got a lot of catching up to do. And you can tell a lot of his main focus since the season has ended has been directly in recruiting and hitting the transfer portal, just trying to get this roster to where it needs to be to compete against the Georgias and Bamas and LSUs and everything for SEC championship. So I think they've done an outstanding job this offseason of recruiting and bringing in guys that can play now while your younger guys kind of have a chance to develop and not be forced to play earlier than they're ready for. So, I think the staff has done a really good job.
I want to start with quarterbacks position you're pretty familiar with. Peyton Thorne seems to be the guy once again. What do you see when you see him on the field? When you saw him play last year and in the spring this year, what do you see about him? What do you think the coaching staff likes about Peyton Thorne, and what can he deliver for Auburn this year?
Yeah, I think last season for Peyton, he didn't have a spring. He didn't transfer from Michigan State until the summer. So once he got here in June, he was already behind a little bit as far as the playbook goes and building that chemistry and timing with the receivers. That is very important when you're playing that quarterback position and everyone being able to hear that one voice in the huddle and the snap count. So I think starting the season off for him last year, I think it was a little bit of a rush game, rushing to catch up to a lot of things, not looking comfortable because he's not so familiar with the playbook. But also at the time, he was alternating in and out of the game with Robbie Ashford. And, I think as a quarterback, anytime you're alternating in and out of the game, it can throw off your rhythm. It can throw off your chemistry, and especially when you're trying to learn everything while you're playing. So I think this year he's in tune to have a better season just off the simple fact alone. When I signed the best probably receiver class, that's ever come through Auburn, just off a signing class period. So, you got the Cam Coleman, the Perry Thompson, Bryce Kane, the Simmons, those guys, are really going to come in and have to play early. And two of those guys are really, really big time studs. So, but then you go out, you add Robert Lewis, you go out, you add Smith from Penn State, two veteran receivers. Guys that are well known in college football to help these young guys out and kind of teach them the way a little bit. So he's going to be surrounded with a lot of weapons this year. Fairweather at tight end, and then also you got Jarquez Hunter at running back, Damari Austin, Jeremiah Cobb, those guys. So we know we can run the ball really well, and now that you can throw it, you can look to either side and say, hey, I got big targets. I think that bodes well for him. So I think the thing for Peyton this year is, you had it all off season this time to learn the playbook. Is go out there and don't try to force the game. Just let the game come to you, but just kind of, utilize your experience. You've been starting now for 4 years, going on. Let that experience take over in games and everything. And I think if he can protect the football and play within himself, we'll be all right.
Do you think the lack of receivers, of top-notch receivers last season was one of the issues for the Auburn offense? And how do you see, you mentioned some of these guys. I mean, it is an outstanding group of receivers that Auburn has now. What stands out to you about these guys? What are some strengths that they are bringing to the Auburn Tigers?
Yeah, you're talking about size and quickness. Last year we struggled to create separation. DBs was a lot of hip to hip. We had a lot of shorter receivers that we was trying to throw the ball to. Those guys are really good on the inside, option routes and things like that. But when you go outside, it's a little bit tougher sometimes. And I think, last year we was kind of limited in that position as far as like playmakers that we had on the outside that could create that separation. And, a lot of guys was transfer guys that came in. So there wasn't a lot of, film. It wasn't a lot of history with these guys as far as like understanding what this one's strength is. You got to go through a season together. And unfortunately, sometimes when you go to the portal, guys only got 1 year to play. And so you don't really have that time. And like I said, again, some of those guys came in after spring ball last year. So, this year we did a better job of bringing in transfer guys. Robert Lewis came in January. So he was able to have a full spring ball and everything. The only one that's coming in afterwards is Smith from Penn State. But everyone else has been here. And so that makes a difference in that area of pass and catching. But you talking about Cam Coleman. Cam Coleman can play with the best of them already. Even coming out of high school, it's the reason this guy was one of the top 2-3 receivers in all of high school football. Like his size, his strength, just the way he loves the game of football. If he can keep that humbleness and keep staying hungry the way he's been doing, he's going to be a force to be reckoned with, not just for this year, but the next years to come. And then you talk about Perry Thompson, another big receiver, strong, guy that can run and create separation and high point the football. You need those kind of guys, man, when you playing in a game like this, Chase, where you have to go up sometimes and the guys gotta, make a play for you. Every ball can't be thrown perfect. You got to make a play for your quarterback sometimes. And I think these guys can do that.
The fact that a lot of folks thought Hugh Freeze would go to the portal, bring in another quarterback. We talked about Peyton Thorne a second ago, but do you think the reason he didn't is because he has a lot of confidence in what he think Peyton Thorne can do this year?
Yeah, I think so. Every time a quarterback hit the portal, your phone rings and everyone's saying, "Hey, we get a quarterback." But Coach Freeze came out and said that, hey, he's riding with the guys that he have in his room. He has trust in them. He think they can do whatever we need Auburn to do to win this year. You don't have to have a star quarterback. I think if you look at this roster, the way that we've kind of the offseason has approached, when you look at some of the defensive guys they've gone out and gotten, along with Coach DJ Durkin, a fiery defense coordinator, someone that brings a lot of energy. But then you look at the offensive side of the ball, he goes and get Coach Nitz as the offensive coordinator from Ole Miss, who he has history with. And someone that can, when he's not in the room, that can still relay the message and what they're trying to do from an offensive standpoint. So you think about those guys he's going out, and one thing about Coach Nitz, he can relate to a lot of these guys, so he instantly comes into the room as a former player that played in college football, when he was at Southern Miss. So he gets it. He understands what it's like to sit in those seats. So I think he's done a really good job from that standpoint. And I just think overall, you know, the reason they didn't go get a quarterback because, Peyton, this is his last year. And I guess Coach Freeze probably realized, like, hey, if I do go get another quarterback, I got to reteach this whole system all over again. And you probably just don't have the energy to continue to do that. And he probably feels like, hey, we signed a good high school quarterback. We signed and Walker White. We probably on board to bring in another one this signing class. And then Peyton is a veteran, but Hank Brown is a guy that showed a lot of promise in the bowl game when he got a chance to play. So there are some guys that's in that room that, in time that probably can be the guy for Auburn at that position.
I want to flip over to the defensive side. You mentioned bringing in DJ Durkin to lead the defense, a guy who's been around the SEC, made several stops. You got a guy like Charles Kelly on the staff as well. They've spent some time revamping the defensive line out of the portal. Your thoughts just on this Auburn defense and what fans can expect this season?
Well, we got a lot better after spring. I would say that, Coach Brandon, Coach Kelly, after December was a really great hire. A guy that, he's an Auburn grad, someone that knows a lot about the state of Alabama and how they go out and recruit these high school athletes, which you got to have a connection with high school coaches. And he has a really good relationship with a lot of them. And he's another guy that can, that's a fiery guy. He wants his guys running to the ball, hustle, all those things that you don't see on the scoreboard, but you see it on tape. It's a lot of things that these guys do. But you think about, a secondary. You lose DJ James, you lose Nehemiah Pritchett, you lose Simpson. You lose three of your top players back there. But with that being said, you was able to go and get some guys, and you still have some guys like K.N. Lee, who started the first couple of games last year as a true freshman until Nehemiah got healthy. You still got Keontae Scott, who missed a little bit of time last year to injury, who was one of our best players on the team, period. And, now you got him playing at the other corner. And then you still have veteran guys, lined up from guys who went and got in the portal. So, there's a lot of guys lined up ready to play this year. There's a lot of guys that are hungry. And all those guys back there are experienced guys. So it's not like we're starting a fresh group of guys that has zero experience. No, these guys that's playing this year still have a ton of experience, and they're very talented. I say linebacker core is probably where we need a little bit more depth. We have some really good starters, but if a guy, knock on wood, went down, you'll kind of be hurting a little bit from a depth standpoint at that area. So I think, if we can add a linebacker, I think that'll be great for as far as depth position. Now, you talk about defensive line, they were just able to go out and get the Bleeder kid from Indiana, huge get. You got the Rates kid from USC, another huge get, who was with DJ Durkin before. And so, the chemistry there, it's not like he has to come in and relearn. This is his former coordinator. But then you talk about some of the guys like Gage Keys that came in from Kansas, Trill Carter that came in from Texas, transferred defensive line as well. So from a defensive line standpoint, I think we got older, quicker, because we lost some guys last year, Marcus Harris and Justin Rogers. So to replace those guys, we needed to get some depth. But our young stud, man, to keep an eye on is Keldrick Faulk. This guy was a true freshman last year, came on a lot towards the end of the season. A very good high motor guy, got a lot of character and things that you look for as a leader that can be on that defense, even as he entered his sophomore year.
I know you mentioned depth at linebacker, but do you know of any other positions maybe that the coaching staff say, hey, we would like to get maybe a guy out of the portal? We're sitting here on May the 7th recording this, but is there any other positions you think, hey, we need some depth at this spot?
We just signed a guy from Akron, Ohio, offensive lineman yesterday as well. We signed 2 offensive linemen this offseason. Got one from Mississippi State who's probably going to start at the left tackle position. Big, huge guy in Percy. I'm talking about this guy's a mountain of a man when you're standing beside him. So, Peyton, not that tall, going to have to find a way to find some open windows to throw around him. But then you talk about, Dylan Wade was a left tackle last year who now moves into left guard, which is probably going to be his primary position at the next level. So they've done some things on the offensive line. And you look at Connor Liu, the center, who was able to start as a true freshman in a lot of games. Because our starting center was in and out of the lineup due to injury. So there's valuable experience there. So I really like our offensive line. I really like the depth that they added in the offseason that make us too deep. So that way you're not just stuck on, if I start to go down, we're reshuffling. We don't have to do that. We have depth there. So I'm really excited about the depth that we got in that position. And we added another defensive end from Arkansas State. I can't remember his name at this moment, but we added another defensive end who, when you look at this guy, man, like he looks like one of those Javon Curse type dudes back in the day. He looks the part. So I think we definitely needed someone like that to help spell Jalen McLeod, who's kind of an undersized DN, but who's really fast though of getting off the line. But you can't have him going every play, every snap. So you need someone else that can come in that's a little bigger to help shoulder that load.
Well, looking forward to Auburn football coming up in 2024. Former Auburn quarterback Jason Campbell, now a radio analyst with the Auburn Sports Network and the Believe in Everything Auburn podcast. Jason, really appreciate you joining me talking some Auburn football today. We'll have to do it again soon, but thanks for your time.
I appreciate it, Chase. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. We'll have you covered all off season and into the season on Southeastern 14. Subscribe to our channel, like our videos, and share it with your friends. We'll be back with more on Southeastern 14.